This is Nick Arquette, our founder of Walk with Sally. I'm the Special Events and Marketing Manager here at Walk with Sally, and this is episode 2 in our founder series where we get to know a little bit more about Walk with Sally and the behind the scenes of how everything came to be. So today's topic is, who are you, Mr. Arquette, and how did you decide to start Walk with Sally, and kind of what was the inspiration behind everything? So
yeah, I think the thing I want to do right now is just, I know everyone's just about to get on any minute and they're going to miss all these nuggets. So I just kind of want to make sure, I want to first of all see how you're doing.
Oh, thank you.
After White Light and the whole, just sort of wrap out of White Light, are you kind of back after having a baby? And
we're good. Yeah, things are going well. We're quickly doing a lot of exciting things lately. 1 hour long cycle. Shout out to that. Mm-hmm. If you don't know about it, check out our website and you'll find out more about the kettlebell lifting challenge for 1 hour.
I've never known so much about lifting a kettlebell in my life.
There's a lot to it.
But I love it.
But you don't have to be a pro. Anybody can do it. Any amateurs.
And I think for a small nonprofit, the word I like to use right now for this challenge is international. The fact that we have people from all over the country for
Russia,
the first time.
Canada, all over the United States.
Sharing who their Sally is and who they are trying to lift for is kind of amazing. And to have everybody come together on October the 21st.
Yep, Saturday.
All at 11 o'clock around the world is kind of the first time that we've really, impacted people all across the country. So kind of
really
fun fact as one of our program associates would say. So that's really great.
I know. I love all those fun, interesting facts.
Fun fact.
Anyway, so shall we get started?
Let's do it.
All right, people. So, who is Nick Arquette? Who are you, and how was your story led to the creation of Walk with Sally?
I think that I look at myself right now as an entrepreneur, and then in even more a social entrepreneur, and it's sort of an emerging word that I'm seeing some people out in the country and in the world that are really putting their knowledge and education around business to social good, social change. You're seeing a lot of companies like Tom's Shoes and others that are getting involved in social good, but to actually create a program that's designed to ultimately help children whose parents, siblings, guardians have cancer or succumb to cancer, providing a program that's going to change people's lives. So I look at myself as a social entrepreneur in this endeavor, and really my past is one of a struggle from my childhood, and then emerging into developing myself and my skill sets through everything from the film industry to in-home care. So really kind of a contrast between those two. Currently working on developing an app for senior care, and growing Walk with Sally to every city in North America. So, and then beyond, I can see having it in France and Italy and in Asia. So I really think of myself as a social entrepreneur who has learned through a lot of heartache, a lot of difficult times, a lot of roads traveled to ultimately do good and have purpose, and to develop a company that will attract people like you to what nonprofit can really look like now. And so ultimately I want to help children, but I also want to change the way that we think about nonprofit.
Yeah, the new nonprofit.
The new nonprofit. Yeah.
So let's talk about your story and your connection with cancer, which ultimately led to the creation of Walk with Sally.
Sure.
What really was that moment like for you?
Sally is a word that we hear every day, but when I was a little boy, my mom was a single mom. She was working 2 jobs. I don't know if I ever told you this. She was a medical transcriptionist.
No.
Back in the day, they went 9 to 5 at the hospital, and they typed all of the words that the doctors had prescribed inside of a headset. So everything that they said, you had to have medical terminology to even understand the words.
Crazy.
And so you basically were writing catalog after catalog of terminologies.
Wow.
And so she did that during the day, and then she taught community college on the weekends.
What did she teach?
Same thing.
Oh.
And then she wrote a book about medical terminology. And so she was a transcriptionist, and I remember being so proud because she could type 120 words per minute.
That's a lot.
So she was kind of jamming. on the electric IBM typewriter. So ultimately, a woman who was struggling to raise two boys, my brother Alex and myself, he was 3.5 years older, and who she was as a mother really is the genesis of Walk with Sally. And who is your Sally? We talk about the moms and the dads and the people that exist that are trying to raise a family. When cancer hits, what happens to the family? So my mom struggled to survive. Ultimately, I moved in with a father I didn't know very well in Idaho. So there was a lot of layers of impact, leaving California, losing my dog, losing my friends, and then ultimately sort of waking up at 18 and saying, like, what am I going to do with my life? And not really having a very large family meant that I was going to have to survive on my own, and I was going to have to make some decisions if I was going to go this way or if I was going to go this way. And so probably made some mistakes along the way, but ultimately came up with a concept in my early 30s to honor my mother and create a nonprofit that was going to help children in her name, so that Sally, which her name hadn't been mentioned in years, and it really upset me. I think a lot of folks that I talk to around the country, when we share Walk with Sally, talk about how afraid they are of losing the memory of a loved one, and how that sort of horrifies people, that their existence and who they were as a person is kind of like less and less relevant. And so I think that people can relate to like losing somebody and then wanting their memory to still stay alive. And then that love of my mother really transformed into a beautiful company that is changing people's lives in LA County.
Right. So fast forward to 2005, when Walk with Sally got their 501c3. What were those early years like in putting this organization together?
Well, I mean, I think like with a lot of things, it's like, oh, what a sweet idea. And I had a lot of people patting me on the head and going like, I hope you have insurance. But they sort of missed the concept, which was that this didn't exist in the community, and that I was willing to sort of try and experiment with what could it be. And I think those early years was a lot of enrollment conversations with people to convince people like yourself to do this work for free.
Yes, a lot of volunteers.
And to take leadership roles in areas that we thought we needed to raise money. We thought that we needed to find children, and we thought that we needed to find mentors. And so it was really kind of a labor of love amongst friends. And I think
I've heard some of those stories about meeting in
my
your
house,
basement or somebody else's basement.
It was dinner at my house every other Tuesday.
There you go.
And there were certain tasks, and at that point we were really only shooting for like one thing 3 months away. It would be like, one family, one event at the hotel. We were at the Bellamar Hotel when they first went through their remodel, and we were their first party that they had. And then the Shade Hotel rooftop party was the first time they had that, and then Hush Salon for White Light White Night,
the first
annual White Light.
Yeah.
So really that was a time of kind of a passion project. And I think the challenge became a point in which it was like you really needed to hire people and have a real office, and the understanding that in order for this to grow, there was going to have to be much, much more resources that were going to have to go toward this cause if it was going to actually last. And I met a lot of people along the way that had passion projects, were doing great work in the community. They had lost a husband or a son, or they had a daughter who was sick. I mean, I was meeting with a lot of people. I was taking mentoring courses. I was doing mentor trainings for Big Brother, Big Sister, the foster care program. I was really experimenting with just what is mentoring and the power of mentoring, I think. And so I was really just, fact-finding mission. But really recognizing that it wasn't going to grow until we put some resources towards experienced staff and built on what we had kind of done from a grassroots level. And I realized from talking to a lot of people that passion can only get you so far.
Right.
And I think kind of looking at it full circle, like at some point, passion hit responsibility, and then tenacity and sticking to it, because it was going to be a long process and a long period of time of saying yes, even though you maybe had run out of the passion part at certain points. So I think ultimately for anybody that wants to start a nonprofit, passion can only get you so far, and ultimately it will be about the people that you bring in who have certain levels of skill sets and knowledge, and your ability to really stay with it, because there are going to be times when you feel ultimately challenged and you think to yourself, I don't really have to do this. What are we doing?
Right.
And you've got to get through those tough times. And so an example would be White Light, White Night in 2014, which you were a part of, when it rained out, and we'd never experienced anything like that. And to be challenged with that type of devastation, your big event that raises most of the money for the organization, while you're trying to build other development channels, and you're relying so heavily on that special event, to have that thing shut down within minutes before the actual event was traumatic.
Yeah, very traumatic.
And so opportunities along the way to stop and to quit are there.
Where it could be so easy to let it fall away.
Yeah,
right?
exactly. And I think establishing the organization and taking it to the next level means there's more responsibility, there's more people counting on you, there's more families, and more reason to really develop a responsible company with transparency, and highly organized and highly functioning as a business.
Yeah. Now, you talked about all the learning you did to educate yourself about the mentoring program and the benefits of mentoring. Yeah. Who was the first mentor? Who was the first mentee? How did that whole program get started?
I think one of the lucky, happy accidents, which I don't always talk about, is that I was already a volunteer in the community. Mm-hmm. I don't know how I sort of developed that from a young age, but I already had in me this need to want to give back. And I look back on my childhood and wonder why, because I probably was the one that needed the mentor. Mm-hmm. But I was tapped as a leader early on. I can remember Saturday mornings walking to the Red Cross in the Bay Area on Saturdays, because I, in 5th grade, signed up for it and had to walk 3 miles to get there. I mean, crazy stuff, where I was doing office work at the YMCA during college, and then youth basketball. So there's always this sort of history of giving back. And so I was already working at Lawndale Elementary School through the Screen Actors Guild as a book pal. And
what's
the book pal is an organization through Screen Actors Guild. Shout out to the Screen Actors Guild and the book pals. They assign an actor to a school in your area to read to kids.
How cool is that?
And I will tell you, if you're going to read to kids, read to 3rd and 4th graders. By the time I get to 5th grade, they don't appreciate you.
Okay.
They're really into you. Third and 4th grade, they're like, but then after that, they're like, nah, that couldn't happen.
Too cool. Yeah.
And so Book Pals developed a really tight bond with the teacher that I was reading for, and the principal. And I was seeing that this school in Lawndale needed more than just me reading. Adults weren't going on field trips, so they were asking me if I would attend as a dad would attend on some of their field trips. I mean, it was In-N-Out. Did you remember the In-N-Out field trip? The girl behind the camera, I think, may have done the In-N-Out field trip.
Yeah, I did.
Yeah. And so, but then there was the Metro when it first started, and riding the Metro field trip.
Wow.
And so they needed help, and they didn't have a lot of men, which we see a lot in volunteering, that men, for some reason, don't
aren't the first to sign up.
As much. So I started really working with them, and then they had a career day, and I went in and talked about what it was like to work in the film industry and being in the Screen Actors Guild, and built that, and it gave me a really great opportunity to come to them and say, I have this idea. And so, to answer your question, I was the first mentor. I was the first mentor who was matched with a little boy who they told me had just came over from Cuba. They had left his father. His name was Husani, and his mother moved him to Virginia. Then she got breast cancer and moved to North Carolina, and then she died, and he had to move to Lawndale, California, with his aunt who had 4 kids, and she was 28 or 29.
And how old was Husani?
Husani was in 3rd grade.
Okay.
Super quiet, super reserved. They were very concerned about him. And my goal and job was to just communicate, to show up once a week. And I'd learned from mentoring, you just show up and let it happen. But if you show up, that's half the battle. And so I just started telling him about how I talked to my mom, how I lost my mom. And he was like, you talked to your mom? And I said, yeah. And he said, you know, what do you say? And I said, get me a cute girlfriend. You know, so we had
priorities.
We had super cool interactions, and it took a while for him to really communicate with me. And the teacher started to note that he was expressing himself, that he was starting to talk, that he had really changed. Flash forward 3 years ago, I was contacted. I hadn't seen him. He had moved away after that year. And he said he found some schoolwork where the teachers had said Walk with Sally's helping him express himself. And he thought that must have been that guy. Mm-hmm. So he looked up Walk with Sally, called the office, and one of our program managers, I think Julie actually, answered the phone, and it was Husani, who we'd all known about as part of our Genesis. And so that was the first one. And then from there we started to match some of the families through Lawndale School District, and that district really just was the first to say yes to the idea, and they started to introduce us to these families that were in need, families that were going through breast cancer, families that mom had died when someone was 1 year old. So we just started seeing all sorts of families that were in need of a mentor. Mm-hmm. And that was really kind of the aha moment where, wait, not only was it a good idea in concept, in theory, but in actual, you know, day to day, it was actually working, and that there was a need in the community.
What an incredible kind of instance of being in the right place at the right time and having the right supporters, and just all of these things coming together to kind of create the beginning.
Yeah, and I think too that if you generate your community, if you are the one that can create community, and you can ask for help, and you can go to your church, and you can have a group of friends. One of the things I think I had at my disposal was that I was really good at sharing, well, actually finding communities and then sharing with those communities and having them believe in the cause. But it's also, I reflect back on those days of Jane Addams, is like the willingness to be in this cold library on a Tuesday night when maybe 2 people might show up to hear what we were going to do. Mm-hmm. And those early days were all about one person showing up. Mm-hmm. You know,
building that community slowly.
Yeah, and being okay with if nobody came.
Right.
And just sitting out there in Lawndale in the library going well, you know, this is what we're doing. And those were days that weren't as fun, but they were certainly challenging. Yeah. And even just to put on an event and hope that people would show up, that was a huge thing for me. I was so afraid of standing on stage and being like, hi, welcome everybody, and it's like crickets, you know, no one there. So there was a lot of fear that we had to overcome.
What do you think were some of those key steps in building Walk with Sally to what it is today? What do you think, if you had to look on some of those milestones, what were some of the key decisions you made to help it continue to grow and to move past some of those places where you thought it was going to be so easy to just let it go away?
Definitely staying with it consistently over time, not letting periods of time go where there was nothing happening. I think a lot of times that they'll start something and then there'll be breaks in time. We stuck with it weekly. Finding people that really believed in the cause and were willing to put their leadership towards it and actually move the needle. Developing a signature event that people loved, and it became an opportunity to have more awareness. So White Light certainly was that event that people really gravitated toward and wanted to know more about the charity. So that was a really good decision. Hiring amazing people and getting them to believe in what it was that we were doing outside of their day-to-day job, that to just be ultimately passionate about the mission and what we wanted to do to grow, and also to believe that we're creating a community and a platform and a movement for nonprofit. Mm-hmm. So there's really kind of 2 levels of what we're doing here. So I think bringing in amazing people who believe absolutely in the fact that this should be in every city, and that nonprofit should be different, and nonprofit should be fun. Yeah. And I think other moves that I made was things like putting energy towards making things like having a nice office and creating a corporate culture that people were going to love to be a part of our organization, and employees were going to love working for the organization. And then ultimately dedicating myself 100% to growing the business, I think, was one of the best decisions that I made.
Mm-hmm. And I think one thing you've said too is part of that whole idea of a new nonprofit and looking at the corporate culture is looking at it like a business, like a social business, basically.
Or startup,
a startup business, a grassroots. and building it as such, as opposed to feeling like you're always being constricted by the nonprofit typical ideals.
Model.
Right.
Yeah. I think ultimately a lot of people grew up in a certain way of thinking nonprofit without really knowing how a nonprofit works, and ultimately it's being able to put the resources and energy and talent in a position to succeed and to compete in this world that's very competitive, and to have the marketing and to have the messaging and to have a sophisticated growth model, have a sustainability plan, to ultimately invest in this organization as Tesla would or Google would, so that we could have our own growth moments and be excited as a team and fully look at it as a nonprofit that wants to be creative and change how we interact with the public, are the people that we serve, to continue to provide the free support services, but to be able to have a sustainable model. And I think changing the way we interact with the public, and then ultimately fundraising is becoming a whole different ballgame, and the way that people used to raise money has completely changed.
Right.
The technology has changed, and we've got to be more innovative and sophisticated and efficient.
Right. And what people, some people might not know, knowing Walk with Sally and White Light, White Night, is that for Walk with Sally, like you mentioned, White Light, White Night is one of our predominant ways of gaining income for the organization. But a lot of nonprofits are not built that way. A lot of old school nonprofits are built in a way of relying on grants or
large donors,
the government, and things like that. So while Walk with Sally continues to diversify, the special events has really been the fundraising of the event side.
Kind of the hallmark of it. And then also utilizing those opportunities to have funding from a successful event to invest in future opportunities for us to really diversify. So we're looking at just getting smarter about how we're spending our time on the development side to find other channels of revenue, whether it be the traditional grants, or now our Friends of Sally program, which is a monthly giving program where you can give $15 or $20 and help support a friendship for the year, and a much more efficient way to get that support from people who love the organization. And so growing a lot of those pieces. And then also, too, you talked about just how do we message and tell the story of how we're spending our money. There's a lot of technology and there's a lot of ways to go about this, but it requires education, consulting, ongoing support. And so to tell our story, we've transformed how people can see where the money's being spent, and what does it take to build one friendship, and how do you manage 100 at one time, and how do you put on activity events, and how do you give money to a family who just found out they may be getting evicted. So art programs and other healing opportunities, and our most important job, which is to make sure that the mentor can survive and or surpass the 1-year commitment.
Right.
And that's built in. Everything we do for that year is about supporting that friendship, because we know that's really the marker from a national standpoint. Walk with Sally is so committed to making sure these friendships last a lifetime. And we have some great stories, and we're getting more and more excited, like hiring Desi, who was a mentor, who's now a specialist going to school to get her master's in marriage and family therapy, and now becoming once an intern and now actually working full-time for the organization. These are big stories that are developing through the work that started from a mentor and a mentee meeting when she was 10 years old.
Yeah, and just showing up, right?
Just showing up and being an influence and a positive influence in a child's life when they need it the most, because when cancer hits the family, a lot of things fall to the wayside, and one of that's attention. And I always say, from Frank Noyes from Lawndale Elementary School, he said, "Nick, every child wants to be known." And I'll never forget him telling me that. I was like, okay, that's what we're going to do.
That's a great quote.
Thank you.
That's
a good way to end this thing?
I think it might be.
Do you want to wrap it?
I think that might be it.
Most people can't watch stuff past 15 minutes anyway. Although there's some nuggets coming towards the end.
Is there anything else you'd like to tell us about who you are and inside of
Just
Walk
a
with
boy
Sally?
who lost his mom to cancer. No, I'm a man who wants to change lives. And we're just excited about the team that we've built, the growth that we're feeling, and to take this from one friendship to thousands of friendships throughout the country is really an exciting opportunity, and hoping that people continue to support and say that this is really a needed angle. There's a lot of money going towards research and really great causes to support other aspects of cancer. And Walk with Sally truly is one of the very few that's committed to the impact cancer has on a child. So just keep an eye out for that growth and be excited and raise this up in your spirits and your prayers so that we can grow and help kids in every city.
Yeah. I love that. Well, thank you for joining us. If you have any questions, any follow-up questions, we will have one last episode
our
in
next episode?
The Founder Series. The next episode will be about future goals for Walk with Sally. So what are we going to do, and what are our plans for the future? I mean, we've already talked a lot about what we've kind of done to build it this far, and
how are we going to get there?
I know there's some big goals for the future, and we're going to talk a little bit more about what we want to do there. So
exciting.
Make sure to join us in November. We'll see you then, and continue to follow us on social media, on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. We're at Walk with Sally, or on YouTube. You can check out this video and ask any questions on there as well. The YouTube channel is Walk with Sally 1.
Yeah, and if you're out there and you want to start your own nonprofit and you've watched this video, don't be afraid. It's going to be okay. But certainly if anybody is interested in starting their own nonprofit, I can always make myself available as well. So DM us and stay connected, because I do have a lot of people asking me about their own ideas and passions and how to start their own nonprofit. And I'm all about making this world a better place, and I think the more nonprofits, the better.
Absolutely. We'd love to work with them. Thanks so much for joining us, and we'll see you soon.